What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Game Plan NFL Week 3. We're talking DFS, we're talking best bets, and we're talking about it with the best in the game, John Statsational of Alesia from the Sharp app. What's going on, John? Welcome to NFL Week 3.
Week 3, man, flying by already.
That's how it goes for the NFL season. Things start moving. I like when we get to this part of the season because and as a data-driven person, I would imagine you do too, as we finally start to get enough data from these games and these players to start understanding some usages. Teams, come out of their sort of early season funk a little bit where they're off their game and start to, play as you were expecting them to. Winners and losers are emerging in the fantasy space in terms of usage and everything. So this is an exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the first couple of weeks, like you said, it's first couple of weeks you could have an advantage. I mean, I know you study it all summer long, so it does you could have an advantage over the field, but for the numbers guys like myself, things start to kind of weed themselves out, so to speak. So you start to get a feel for which running back's going to get used more in the out of the two, let's say, and which wide receivers are going to get all the target shares and things like that. So the numbers start to get a little bit clearer. And in some instances, things get a little bit more cloudy. So, that the NFL is tricky in that way. But yeah, as these weeks go on, we should get a little bit more clarity on the data and who's going to get usage. And that's really what it's all about in the NFL, more so than talent, as you know.
Absolutely. Now, what we're going to talk about on this breakdown, as always, we're going to take a look at the Sunday group of games. We're going to take a look at that from taking a look at some DFS and fantasy angles. And we're also going to take a look at some betting angles for those games. So we're about to jump right into it. But first, I want to mention a thank you to our sponsor, Mojo Fantasy. Mojo Fantasy is an awesome app where you can effectively bet props on a sports book that are liquid at all times, but in a DFS format. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but we want to mention them and thank them as well as we're now getting ready to get into this game breakdown, John. And NFL Week 3 is really interesting from a game totals perspective because there's one game that stands out above all others, the Vikings game with a 54-point total. The next best game, Broncos Dolphins at 48.5. And then it just drops down from there in terms of the total. So DFS should be really interesting this week in terms of how do you deal with this one game that stands out so high above all? It's not that unusual. It happens all the time. Last week, the most standout game completely dudded. And you saw the chalk faders do incredibly well last week. We'll see if that trend continues. But let's get right into it, John. First game on the docket. Falcons at the Lions. And this is a pretty interesting total here at 46. It's sort of in the upper echelon of game totals. Falcons are a run-heavy team. They're 2-0 at this point. They're coming in as 3.5-point road underdogs. Going into the Dome to take on the Lions. So my question for you here is, any betting angles here with the Lions 3.5-point favorites? Does this say the 1-1 Lions are favored against the 2-0 Falcons?
Yeah, I jumped. Are you hearing the thunder, by the way?
No, I can't hear you.
Yeah, we're in the middle of a storm right now. So if you lose me, but
par for the course in Florida.
Yeah, this is, our afternoon storms. But yeah, the line at 3.5, I took this one yesterday. Just I took the dog here, Atlanta plus the 3.5. I liked it with the hook. So, and you can still get that 3.5 out there. I think all the books really pretty much have it at 3.5. So I like grabbing that now before it gets down to 3. If you do like the dog, I think if you like Detroit, you could kind of wait on this one. And the line has come down. I mean, from there, it was up. It hit all the way up to 6, came all the way down to 3. It's kind of settled in at that 3.5 number. The money's been coming in primarily on Atlanta, 50-50 on the tickets. And the total in this game, the under has hit about, or it's taken in about 2-1 on the money. On the under, on the underside of the game. From a DFS standpoint, yeah, you mentioned that Atlanta run heavy. I mean, I think it's now basically what the Bijan Robinson is going to be the show, right? I mean, any of the Algier talk I think is done. I mean, if you've watched the games, which I know you watch, I mean, Robinson just looks like, I mean, he looks like one of those few special running backs. There's a reason you take him early.
Bijan is so good. They are still mixing Tyler Algier in the game plan, but you watch the game and Bijan is so freaking good. And this team is so run heavy that it doesn't matter. Like Bijan's getting 25 touches, and that's with only 60% of the workload. So there's so much running game work anyway with this team that it doesn't really matter. But Bijan is a stud. He will be a stud for Soul. I love this kid, right? But he's already priced as a stud on the DFS side, so we have to accept that we are paying full price for this fellow. It's interesting that the running back that I'm more excited about in this game is actually Jahmyr Gibbs potentially. If Montgomery, so there's a little conflicting information about Montgomery's injury where the Lions are saying day to day and Montgomery's saying a couple weeks, right? So we'll see which one is true. But if Montgomery doesn't play in this one, we might get to see that other first round running back, Jahmyr Gibbs, finally featured in a game, which is something I'm super excited about if that comes about this week. I think Bijan is absolutely playing the other side. The only other angles here that are of interest, of course, Amon-Ra is always interesting. I think the fact that Josh Reynolds is still priced super low. I talked about him last week on this breakdown as well. And who's 3,700. I was like, that is going to be one of the best plays of the week. Of course, he wound up in the nuts lineup. So I'm glad for everybody who watched this show last week that was able to get onto Josh Reynolds. But he's still underpriced relative to the role on his team. He's still a sub 4,500 on DraftKings and cheap on FanDuel as well, although not as cheap. So definitely a good play to keep your eye on with Josh Reynolds. And Amon-Ra is always in play every game. Last week, we did finally see Drake London have a decent game as well. And I think that could continue to be the case as Drake London is like the only option in the passing attack for the Falcons. So definitely a couple of DFS angles I think that will be interesting from this game. As far as the bets, yeah, I would agree with you. I think you'd have to favor taking the 3.5. Just got to take the points. Too close of a game to really be. I don't expect the Lions to blow out teams like this, especially such a run-heavy, decently playing defense team like the Falcons. Next up, the Bills are taking on the 1-1 Bills are taking on the surprisingly good 2-0 Washington Commanders. With Washington coming in as 6.5-point home underdogs in a game with a pretty anemic 43.5-point total. So, John, I mean, the Bills have not been blowing anybody out of the water so far to start the season. They looked better last week, finally utilizing Gabriel Davis in the game a little bit. Are you laying the 6.5 here? You're laying that juice? It's quite a bit to lay.
Yeah, I think it's probably a little too much. It's almost like they're sucking you in here with the 6.5, not giving you the 7. Like they're just kind of teasing you into taking Buffalo on this one. I don't really have a play that I necessarily like on the game. But the line, I mean, the line did move from 4.5 up to 7 briefly, and then back down to 6.5. Most of the money, as you might imagine, is going to be is coming in right now on Buffalo, because, like I said, I think it just feels like they're sucking you in on that line. The total catching most of the money to the over as well. I think when you look at what happened in that Buffalo or that Washington game last week, where really it wasn't the offense necessarily of Denver that let them down, although they stopped scoring, but they scored a ton of points in that game. So I think they're looking at it like, if Russell Wilson, as bad as he's been, can look that good against this defense, then perhaps we're going to see we're going to see Allen go off on this one. So people are coming in betting the over. For me right now, it's kind of it's a no play as far as there's no bets that I like. Maybe some props later in the week as we go. We'll start analyzing those.
Yeah, there's only so many props out this early in the week. I don't know. Brian Robinson has been pretty good at running back for the Commanders. So as far as fantasy plays from a game like this, the Commander side is tough because I don't really trust the pass catchers all that much in this kind of a spot. I think maybe Jahan Dotson could be live here as the Bills do have some quality CB1 talent that I would imagine would be on Terry McLaurin, which might push some targets over to Jahan Dotson. It's all very speculative. Not a side I'm really super excited about, though. The Bills side, though, I think you could always play some spots from the Bills team. Josh Allen is just always a threat for 30 plus. I don't care what the opponent is. I don't care who they are. He's always going to be a threat for a 30 plus. So I think he's in my mix just from that reason. One weird thing last week that emerged from the Bills game was just a massive game from James Cook. And I do have some observations about that, John. Like, James Cook had a big game. At the same time, he put up over 100 yards rushing, got 17 attempts last week. But at the same time, you know who was in the game at the goal line? Lats Murray, Damian Snacks Harris. It wasn't Jimmy Cook. And so where I don't want to chase his big game from last week, because I think, asking for 100 plus yards and a bunch of receptions from a back that is not in the game at the goal line, and for them to produce enough to make value at $6K plus on DraftKings, that is not a recipe for long-term DFS success. I don't really see enough upside in James Cook right now. I could be wrong. Listen, pie, egg on my face, whatever you want to say, that's fine. But for now, I think he is overpriced for the role. We saw Devin Singletary kind of have a couple good games with the Bills at one point, but in the end of the day, if they're not going to give him goal line carries, the touchdowns just are not going to be there, and that is not what I want in my running back selection. So I'm staying away from him, but I do think that Josh Allen is always going to be live for a 30 plus in a game like this. All right, next up, we've got probably the second best game on the slate from a DFS perspective. The Broncos are heading to your neck of the woods to take on the Dolphins. The Dolphins are coming in as 6.5-point home favorites in this one. The game total is 48.5. And John, this one is, I love the Dolphins. I'm becoming I might be a Dolphins fan. Not from a care if they win or lose perspective. Let's not go crazy. But I just love a team that only throws to 2 or 3 players, but likes to throw a lot. That is gold for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's predictability. That's really the what makes them fun for DFS. So yeah, predictability. You've got the two. What's the situation with Waddle? Do we know?
He's in concussion protocol or being evaluated. So unknown at this moment.
So yeah, I mean, from DFS standpoint, does it become then a Hill heavy game, or is there someone else takes over the Waddle role? I mean, that's the question.
I think Waddle ends up playing. So Patrick Surtain is on the Dolphins, right? And that kid is a very good cornerback. He is like Sauce Gardner level, one of the young super stud cornerbacks. I think he's on the Broncos. So if Waddle's playing, I'm excited to use Waddle because I think Surtain will be on Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill cannot be completely contained, but if you put an elite corner on him, it should hold him down just a smidge. We saw last week the Patriots used a very, very deep safety approach to the game, which wound up getting the Patriots torched via the run. So Belichick going to make you take away what you do best. Patriots went deep safety last week, covered everything over the top. And what ended up happening was Raheem Mostert winds up with the big game last week and scoring all the touchdowns, which is why the wide receivers were down for the Dolphins. I don't see the Broncos bringing that same game plan because the Broncos just are not Bill Belichick. They're not game planning. They don't have opponent-specific game plans the way that the Patriots would. The Broncos are much more likely to throw Surtain on Hill and say, cover him, and then we're going to play our normal defense, which would open things up for Waddle if Waddle plays. So that's the side I'm probably more interested in. But generally, I think the passing game should be great in this spot for Miami across the board. The Broncos, on the other hand, I don't know what to make of that team. They had that big game last week, but it was Marvin Mims catching big touchdown. The guy had 6 snaps. You cannot chase the Marvin Mims touchdowns. He was barely on the field. How do you see it going down?
Yeah, I mean, let me just give you the betting, the markets as they're looking now. This moved from 5.5 up to 7, back down to the 6.5 number. Most of the money coming in on the Denver side, believe it or not. It kind of has that sharp feel to it, like the sharp money's coming in, although we haven't seen anything on the sharp report that we get from Anthony yet on that one. But if you're looking at the handles, it's a lot more tickets coming in on Miami as opposed to where all the money is coming in on Denver. I mean, you would assume if the sharps were going to be in on a side, it would be on the Denver side. They're always going to be a little contrarian. And the fact, this is another one where that line sitting at 6.5, and like everyone, a lot of people came away from that. A lot of the public came away from that Sunday night game saying, boy, this Miami team is legit, right? They looked really good, looked good defensively. When I look at my numbers from DFS, like it's only 2 games, but they're the best team against the wide receiver position right now on defense. And they're the best team offensively at the wide receiver position. No shock. So I don't know if they're going to maintain that, that their prowess in on defense, but they've done really well against the quarterbacks. They've done really well against wide receivers, not so well against running backs. So you saw that last week where Stevenson was able to get some, I think, did he have 1 or 2 touchdowns in that game? I think the one, and he got some yardage on him. So, again, this is early in the year, so we'll see how it all pans out. But yeah, it seems like just from the betting action, the sharp money kind of coming in on the Denver side of the game. And then when we look at the total, the money and the tickets are coming in on the over. So, we love seeing that with Miami. There's a potential here for a game stack for sure when it's Miami. And listen, Russell Wilson, from a win standpoint, not good, but last week he put up some decent numbers. So,
yeah, it's tough to trust, Russell Wilson over any kind of long period of time. But he looked good last week. One of the things I was talking about in DFS was just like, you never know where the nuts performance is going to come from. There's no way that you should have thought going into last week, like, oh, Russ is going to be one of the high scoring quarterbacks on the slate, or that, although I did have Daniel Jones in my mix, that Daniel Jones was going to be the highest scoring quarterback on an entire slate in that game with a 40-point total. You never know where it's coming from.
You could have picked at halftime of the 4:00 games and said that Daniel Jones wasn't going to be anywhere close to the nuts. So,
by the way,
that's how hard it is to predict.
That saved my DFS day a little bit. Just because some of the lineups I made were Jones Waller lineups. I was like, oh, here we go. They're running. Thank goodness for that. Because my Trevor Lawrence lineups did not look very good last week. They looked horrible. So glad about that. I think DFS angles. Yeah, the Dolphins have Xavier Howard at cornerback. He's elite as far as a cornerback when he's healthy, and he's shutting down your WR1, who really even know who that is, or if that's Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy or whatever, but they're doing that. It's tough to play Broncos running backs. Normally, like, I'd be interested in Javonte Williams, but he's not really getting volume yet. I think his explosive day is coming soon, but until we see him get more than 13, 14 touches in a game, 15, until we see him really take over the role as the lead back, it's really tough to trust him to do anything as well. So not a whole lot coming out of this game for me outside of, like I said, if Waddle plays, I'll be really interested in Waddle as that. Anytime you see a team play the Broncos, you want to go with that number 2 wide receiver just because their number 1 corner is so freaking good. So I'm a little bit interested in that. And again, you guys are watching the game plan, and I've got John Statsational Alesia, number 10 ranked DFS player in the world, currently on the Roto Grinders ranking sheet, top better and lead content analyst for the Sharp app, with me here to break it all down. Next up, we've got the Texans taking on the Jaguars. The Jaguars, this is a crazy number, John. I know this is a John bet situation. It has to be. If I know you. But the Texans are plus 9.5 in this spot on the road. I haven't played that bad. The Texans have not been that terrible. What do your power rankings say? I am super curious of your take on this game. It has a 43.5 point total.
Yeah, I know this kind of sets up as one of those that I usually would like the dog here. But as of right now, I'm not touching this game just yet. Maybe when it gets to 10, if it could get to the 10, potentially, I might take it. I'm actually waiting on that. I might still take the game. Basically, the way I'm looking at it is I'm hoping to find a 10. And as soon as that 10 pops, I will take Houston on this. And if I have to take a lesser line, I'll wait until game time on it. So eventually I'm going to get a Houston bet in there. I'm just hoping I could get that all the way up to 10. Now the money's actually been coming in on Houston, so I'm not too optimistic that that's going to happen. The line did move from 7 up to 9.5, and it's just they won't give me the 10 right now. So I'm just kind of looking up the sharp report. I don't see anything specifically on this game as of yet. So I think the sharps, I think that's what you're going to wind up happening, which is why this game probably doesn't get to 10. Is I think the sharp money is just kind of sitting on the sideline. If it hits 10, they're gonna hit it. But this is one of those where I'll wait until Sunday right before kick, and I'll take whatever line they give me if it doesn't get to 10 at some point during the week. So from a total standpoint, the money coming in on the over, about 2-1, the money on the over, slightly more money than tickets in that fashion. So yeah, I mean, Houston has been better than I think we maybe anticipated. It's only 2 games. Jacksonville, I mean, not very impressive, obviously, offensively last week against the Kansas City defense that you're not expecting much out of the Kansas City defense. I mean, Kansas City offensively didn't look all that great in that game either. So you got to give credit to Jacksonville's defense. But yeah, I think, in Survivor, I just did my Survivor video. Obviously, Jacksonville is going to be a potential play here for Survivor pools. But of the 4 double-digit favorites, or at least they're close to the double-digit, this is the one that scares you maybe the most.
Yeah, I think the bet here is Texans. I don't really get how this thing goes to 10. It shouldn't even probably be at 9.5. In my mind, the Texans have played well. They're playing fairly well. What I love about what the Texans are doing is they're out there letting Stroud get crazy. The dude is throwing 44 to 47 targets per game. And for DFS purposes, we are seeing gold in front of us. There are 3 wide receivers on the Texans that are all averaging 9+ targets per game. And one of them is sub 4K on DraftKings. Like, they're giving you Tank Dell for free. Had 10 targets last week. Nico Collins, who's one of my top plays in my Geeks pick sheet over at DFS Army last week, wound up with something like 30+ fantasy points in the game. Got another 9 or 10 targets. This is great. I love what's happening and they've given up on running the football almost completely. They're just out there like, hey, CJ Stroud, get out there and just throw it like a lunatic, to just pass a ton. And that, for me, is DFS goal. I love it. But also, the Texans should be able to score with that approach. So I don't really get why they're 10-point underdogs. Their defense has been pretty decent. And the Jaguars have just not played that well. So it's like a combination of factors. I think, let me ask you this DFS angle, John. Trevor Lawrence burned everybody last week. Everyone, right? This is a good spot for Lawrence at home against the Texans, right? It's a better spot maybe for Travis Etienne, in fairness, because the Texans are a team you want to run on, but it's a good spot. What do you do in this situation? Do you go right back to the guy? You're like, hey, he burned us last week. I don't care. Let's go back to it. If you did that philosophy and you went right back to Joe Burrow after getting burned week 1, you got burned again in week 2.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my favorite choice, but I'm not deterred just by the fact that they had a bad game last week. I mean, I think we've had enough, we've seen enough out of Lawrence and the Jags here that they are more, you'd have to think that last week was more of a one-off than not. Playing a team like Houston. Now, Houston, like you said, they've been throwing the ball, which means if they're going to throw the ball, higher points in the game, that leads to more opportunities for Jacksonville to score. So to me, it looks like more of a game that you could have a really good game stack in this one. So yeah, I'm not going to be deterred by the fact that he had one bad week. I mean, if people are going to get off him for that, but where you might see people off him is just because the line is so high. People always get worried on these high line games that you're going to, if it's a blowout, then you just don't get as many passing opportunities in the second half of these games, which, I can understand, but that as well, that doesn't turn me off all that much. Cause you consider, like I said, when they're going to be passing the ball, and I think Houston's going to have success passing the ball. So if they do, that's going to force the hand of Jacksonville to go ahead and throw it as well. So I think you can get, if this game is high scoring, you'll see one of the quarterbacks along with at least one of the pass catchers, maybe two. And if it's going to be two, I think you might get two from the Houston side and then one from the Jacksonville side.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm like, if you're playing, Ridley, you might as well throw a Tank Dell or somebody like that in there, or a Nico Collins in there, who I love again this week, and just kind of do a little game build. And if the Texans keep this game close, the Jaguars will continue to push on offense throughout. Again, I think the best spot is Travis Etienne, in just the sense of it's good to run against Houston, but all of the Ridleys and we saw last week, everybody's kind of in play on that Jacksonville offense. Last week it was Christian Kirk a little bit that was doing his thing. So yeah, a lot of different ways to approach it. Now, again, I want to take a second to remind everybody about our sponsor, Mojo Fantasy. And John, a new segment that I want to do called the Top Prop segment, and we're going to kind of mix these two things in. So let me talk a little bit about our sponsor, Mojo Fantasy. Here's how this game works. Basically, there are thousands of NFL and MLB player props in there. You build a portfolio, and the better your portfolio performs, the more cash you win. You pick as many props as you want, and you try to beat the crowd. It's a whole new way to play fantasy. The props act like stocks, so you can buy and sell live all game long. It's really the only fantasy app that allows you to make moves after the game starts, so you're not really stuck in a bad pick. You can cash in on a hot start from your player, or just hang out and let them ride. That's it. Make picks, make moves, make money. You can check it out on the Apple Store right now, and come to more states, sites, the Google Store soon. But currently, you can only get this if you have an Android phone. And John, that brings up the Top Prop segment. And what I want to take a look at right here is the Sharp app Top Props Proptimizer tool. So we can pick up a couple of spots for our Mojo Fantasy lineups, amongst other things, right? So Mojo Fantasy effectively is just giving us props against the spread, and you bet them. The cool thing about that site is, like I said, they are live, like a stock market. There is a live, liquid market at all times on the props, including in-game. But before we could really worry about that, let's talk about some props that stand out. So I brought up the Top Props Proptimizer from the Sharp app. John, a lot of these formulas are your design. So, be proud of this awesome tool that you've put together here on the Sharp app. Now, right up top, I've got the Carolina-Seattle game loaded up because this one stood out for me. The total passing yards for Geno Smith, and you could see here the odds makers have this number set at 252 yards. The Sharp app projection is 228 yards. How do you like this as an under this week? I think part of the reason that projection is kind of below what the sportsbooks have it is because Seattle is super likely to dominate this game defensively and actually lean heavier on the run than they might normally do. That's kind of how Seattle operates. But how do you feel about this particular prop?
Yeah, I mean, I do like the under also. I have it. I was just looking at my projections a little bit higher on the passing yard. So I've got it at in the mid 230s, which still gives you a decent value here on the under. I think you had mentioned you kind of like this one as well, right? You like this to the under for that same reason, where you think they're just going to be able to run the ball. It's a little different scenario than they had last week.
Exactly. I think it makes sense, and I want to parlay it. So I prefer, if I'm gonna parlay, I want a same game parlay with correlated events, and I think that lower passing yards for Geno actually correlates with higher rushing yards for Kenny Walker III. So what I would do, and actually our projection model here on the Sharp app Top Props Proptimizer tool does agree that if you take a look at Kenny Walker total rushing yards, the book number is 62.5, and we are predicting 69.7. It's almost 70 rushing yards. So there's a little bit of value in that over. But when you combine the under on Geno passing yards with the over on Kenny Walker rushing yards, that's when you get, the parlay, the nice return on a correlated play.
Yeah, I have it about the same yardage there as well. I've got it just around 69 yards projected. So, say you got to see what the SGP is on that. But
yeah, I don't know what the number is when you combine them. I'd imagine it's something in the range of 3x. But like What I do on a same game parlay, John, and I'm just gonna like take this away from the tool here for a second. What I like to do is I might take the alt line. I like to give myself a little more chance of actually hitting. So I might actually push the yardage number, for example, down to maybe over 49. And then I'll adjust those numbers a little bit, reduce the long oddsness of it. And that's just how I do it. And actually, I have a question for you. But what do you think of that? So just to increase my odds of hitting a little bit while still getting a more than 2x return.
I mean, here's the thing: if you're getting a good edge on the actual number, then without doing the math, you'll probably be getting pretty much you're going to get a similar edge on the alt line. So I don't mind that at all. So like when you're using the top props and you see an edge on there and it's one that you agree with, don't just blindly take every top prop, right? I mean, you'll see I give out the top prop NFL picks, I give out MLB picks. So I go through and I give the best ones that I feel. I mean, we might give out 100 props here that we think have value, but you really need to go through and filter them yourself and say, well, these are the 5 that I really like the best and play those. That's the way I use the tool. And I think the most effective way to use it. But with that said, we were just talking to one of our guys earlier today, right? And he likes taking those alternate lines, but he likes taking them to where he's getting plus money on it. So you take a prop like this where it's 252.5 on the under. So I don't know if they've got a prop at like 235 and 225, and he'll ladder it down or ladder it up depending. So even if you have to understand. So let's say you're projected, you also agree with that 228 projection. Even if you took it under 200 at whatever, it's going to be an astronomically good price. You're like, well, your projection is over 228. Yes, but I'm getting a really good plus money on that. So you can almost be assured that if you have an edge on the actual line that they're giving you, you also have an edge on all the alternate lines. So taking a shot there for a small amount of money, you may be able to get 4-1, 5-1 on an alternate line, as opposed to even trying to parlay those lines. So there's a couple of different ways you can go about it.
I love it, guys. And if you want to get signed up at the Sharp app and actually check out and have access to the Proptimizer tool and John's top props picks, you don't even have to go through the Proptimizer. John is sifting through it and giving out his favorite plays from the tool in a premium article every week, so you could just follow along. You've been crushing on that. I don't have the numbers for the year, but you've been absolutely on fire. NBA, I think you're up 150 units just in the last year alone in that article, fully tracked. So if you guys want to check that out, promo code DFSA20 gets you 20% off. You can sign up at sharp.app for this tool. It's spectacular. It's $49.99 a month. You get the 20% off. It's $39.99. We never raise the price. And trust me when I tell you, that is a steal for all of the benefits that you get from this. So just follow my sucker bet. I'm 3-0. If you're just following my bets that I give out, you don't use anything else. Crushing it, John. I had a little, that's what I wanted to ask you about. A little, last week, in one of my parlays, it was a plus 320 teaser, right? And the last leg was Seattle. It was the Panthers game, and Saints +4, right? So I had Saints +4 when the Saints were -3 in that game.
Why'd you do that, first of all? Okay.
Why did I hedge it?
No. First of all, why did you take Saints +4?
Why did I take Saints +4? I was all part of my big T. I thought the Saints were going to win the game. Simple.
I get it, but that is never tease.
I do it. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. You're correct in that I'm wasting the point. But I had a 6 or 7 team teaser going, and I just got to put the teams in there that I think are going to win. I do have to cross the 0 mark, and I do waste some of the points on some of the teams. But it's just how I've been doing it. I cannot take a team that I think is going to lose, even if I give them plus 15. I just don't like to have a team that I think is going to lose the game, regardless of the points. I just got problems. I got issues. Don't follow my shit. I'm not.
Now your question is, do you hedge that?
Well, I did hedge it, but my question is, should I have hedged it? So
no.
Going into Monday night, we were locked into a 3.5x win on our 2-unit play. So I was up 3.5x if this last outcome came about. So I went on the book and I looked at the alt line. So there were 2 ways to hedge it. One was follow your bet, which was on Carolina +3. And I was like, ooh, John's on it. Okay. So there was a way to hedge it where you could effectively win both sides by just taking Carolina +3. And now if the game falls in the window, I win both. Or I was able to put, we're talking way too long about this topic. By the way, people are gonna be like, you talk too much.
I've got a whole video on this, on hedging. If you go in the Sharp Academy, if you go inside the app and you go to content, Sharp Academy, there's a whole video on hedging and
I know
exactly
you hate the hedge.
why everything that you did was incorrect. So,
I know you hate the hedge, but I will say this. I took Carolina minus 3.5. I got plus 250 odds on it. I put half a unit on it, and I fully protected my original bet so that even if that lost, I was still going to get my original money back. I only gave up 1/2 a unit of the profit of the 3.5 unit profit of the bet. And for me personally, that was worth doing, even though I know that that is not the sharp way.
Yeah, it's negative EV long term. Yeah. I get it. People like to hedge when they're going to hit these big parlays or something like that because they want to be able to lock in some profit. I always say don't bother playing that last leg, because if you were going to hedge the last leg, you would have made more money by not playing the last leg in the first place. So,
but then I would have hedged the previous leg, and that would have fucked it all up.
And that's how everyone does it. Everyone wants to go. Everyone, it's just a psychological thing. You want to win, and no one losing hurts more than the win. So you'd rather give up a little bit as long as it's a win than lose the full thing. And because you feel like you have it in your hands when you're just one leg away from winning a parlay, it's that close. And when you lose it, it hurts. So
you know what else hurt? I lost money in DFS, so I had to make sure that I made it back on that one bet.
It was in the book, on Score. I'm forgetting the book. The guys who wrote the Freakonomics book, but they did these studies. The golfers who are making a 10-foot putt for par make those putts far more often than they make 10-foot putts for birdie, because the mentality is when you're putting for par, you've already lost. When it's a 10-foot putt for par, you've already lost. Where you're safer with your putt for birdie because you don't want to give up a win. Like if I have a 10-foot putt for birdie, I can't lose here if I just make a par. It's that same mentality. Like when a pitcher goes 3-0 and then 3-2, they give up less hits than when they start 0-2 to the batter and go 3-2, because when they go 0-2, they already felt like they lost and they want to make sure they just get the pitch over the plate. When they're 3-0 to 3-2, they're like, hey, I'm playing with house money at this point.
Take my shots.
It's the same thing you're doing on these parlays where you're like, I've got this one. I can't afford to lose it. Let me just go in there and take my cash out or hedge it or whatever I'm going to do. So same mentality.
I totally fall for that every time. But what I don't fall for is hitting the cash out button on DraftKings or FanDuel because they're ripping you off. And again, let's bring it back to our sponsor. One nice thing about Mojo Fantasy is when you have that same bet going on Mojo, it's a liquid market at all times. They have done something amazing there where that market is liquid. So, if your quarterback, let's say we're playing this Geno prop right on Mojo this weekend, the Geno and the over on yardage for Kenny Walker. Well, as soon as Kenny Walker hits the over, first of all, you could just sell it and you get 100%. It just cashes out. Now you could use that money for something else. But on the Geno prop, for example, that's live throughout the game. So if Geno is just, he's only got like 70 yards at the half, that prop is already like paying out 90 cents on the dollar at halftime. You might choose to cash that one out. You don't have to take a hit when you cash out. You just cash it out 90 cents and buy into a different prop. So reminder, check out Mojo Fantasy, promo code DFS Army. You got to download it on the App Store. It's an app only. And it is a DFS game. You are not actually betting props against the market. Hey, it's a $20 contest, 50-50, meaning the top 50% double their money. And you get to bet props and parlays all weekend long on this awesome stock market style app. And then whoever has the top half of amount of money in their account effectively at the end of the weekend, they get the payout of that 50%. So you're actually not betting anything. It's play money, but you get the experience of sports betting in a DFS concept. Make sure you check out Mojo Fantasy. All right, let's keep going. There's another game here, John. A couple other games that are really exciting, but we're about to get to the big game of the thing. But before we get to that one, we got the Colts at the Ravens. The Colts are on the road, 7.5-point road underdogs, taking on a Baltimore Ravens team that is currently sitting at 2-0. This game carries a 45-point total. I don't know who the quarterback is for the Colts, John. I think it's going to be Minshew. That's the best I could say. It's going to be Gardner Minshew here. He's a competent QB. I don't think they lose anything. I don't think the spread would actually be any. As a matter of fact, I think I'd like the Colts more if Richardson was the QB, and quite honest. But with Minshew in there, 7.5 points. Are you taking the points here?
Yeah, I'm passing on this one. I agree. I like it with Richardson in there. I like what I've seen from Richardson so far. I mean, it's a shame we've seen that with quarterbacks now in the past, right? With these running type of quarterbacks, we talk about it all the time. And this is the kid's played 2 games. He's been hurt in both of those games. He got taken out late in week 1, and last week, of course, scores the touchdown, gets 2 touchdowns early in that game, but gets a concussion on the touchdown.
He was on his way to an epic.
I was long, I was double the market on the Richardson also, so it was looking good there early, and yeah, he would have been in the mid-30s most likely in points. So it's a shame to see. I like how he's playing. I mean, I just like how he plays right now with just 2 games in. I'm not as confident in Minshew. I'm not sure what the line. It's not a huge line mover. I do think the line moves a little bit in favor. If you get Richardson in there, I think it moves in the Colts direction just a little bit. 7.5 it's sitting at now. Not a line that I want to touch. 45 or 46, depending on where you're at for the total. And this one's kind of bounced around on the number between 7.5 and 9.5. The total, not a ton of movement. Dipped down to 44 and then back up to 45.5. You see the Colts have gotten a little bit more of the money. So actually 2-1 on the money, and the total has been pretty split. I want to look and see if we're getting anything from the sharps over on the Sharp Report on this game, and not seeing anything on this one as of yet. So it's like the sharps haven't come in. We haven't seen a ton of money come in on the square side either. So yes, again, I think everyone's going to wait and see. When do we know? I know he's in the protocol. So when do you find out officially if he can clear it?
But by Saturday, we should have a definitive yes or no. So we'll know in a couple of days. I think in today's environment, the NFL's being a little more cautious. It's going to be less and less common to see players who legitimately get concussed. There's a difference between legitimately getting concussed and being checked out for a concussion, to be clear. But a player who's legitimately concussed, I think we're going to see less and less of them playing within a few days of that concussion. My guess would be right now, I would say he does not play. And that's just the environment we're in the National Football League today. You should not be, they must not pressure these guys to come back too soon. That will be a disaster, a PR disaster, an insurance disaster, and every other kind of disaster for the NFL. So they got to not do that.
They dealt with Tua last year, and I think that was the last time they're gonna they'll deal with that.
I hold my breath every Dolphins game that Tua doesn't get banged in the head. I'm so worried about that kid. You have no idea. So as far as DFS angles for this game, it's a tough one. It's a very tough game to actually find. Listen, I love Zay Flowers on the Ravens, period. Mark Andrews, fantastic, right? Every single week, love Zay Flowers, especially we saw Odell Beckham get a little bit banged up last week. He's old as shit. Zay is going to have monster games all year long. He's underpriced for the role. He is the number 1 wide receiver. He is clearly ahead of Rashad Bateman on that team. There's no question that he's the top dog, right? But the Ravens offense isn't super high volume, but flip side, they don't have a lot of running back talent right now on the team. Hill is questionable to play this week. I think Gus Edwards is going to maybe be a bell cow, but who the hell knows, right? So it's very tricky. On the Colts side, similarly, normally Michael Pittman might be interesting here, but with Gardner Minshew and Gardner Minshew as a QB, or can we play him? I'm going to lean to no. I'm going to lean to no. That Minshew is probably not a good play, and that maybe the Colts offense isn't the best of plays here, but there's some GPP upside there. There's a little bit of like, no one's going to play these guys because it's Minshew. And maybe just for that reason alone, there is some tournament upside, but it's not a game that I'm personally looking to target heavy this week at all. And quite honestly, Lamar Jackson's just been a fantasy disappointment. People are thinking, it's funny, I talked about this in the offseason, but this goes back years with Lamar Jackson. He had a couple of really, really great games last year, but a lot of bad games, for a running quarterback. He is figuring out a way to have the legs, but not know how to use them.
I just think they've shut him down. They don't want him to run. So
I was just waiting for
I got the ZZ Top reference. I got it. But
right.
I just think they're telling them basically, and I say this every week. I'm like, you have to beware of these guys. Once they stop them from running, they lose a lot of value.
I get so proud of myself when I
mean, it was a good one
when I do a pun. All right.
At least you reference the good band. I mean, that's,
Listen, it goes from the Woo to ZZ Top to the Scorpions to fucking, to Seal. I'm all over the place. I'm all over.
Unfortunately, they're not all they're not all still alive. But I used to go every year to the Beacon, man. Great show.
For not ZZ Top, the Beacon was the Allman Brothers back in the day. That was
I can't deal with the jam bands. I saw the Allman Brothers once, and I'm like,
they used to go to the Beacon. They'd be there for a month.
I can't deal with it. I walked out.
Oh, they're terrible.
I just can't. I can't sit there and listen to the same song for 20 minutes.
You want to hear something horrible? My wife wants me to bug the DraftKings rep for tickets to Pitbull and Enrique and Livin' La Vida Loca.
Iglesias.
Enrique Iglesias and the really handsome dude and Pitbull are doing. She's like, can we go to that? Like, really? That's the one that we're gonna go see.
Yeah, that's what you're using.
Ricky Martin. I'm going to the Ricky Martin.
You're using all your DraftKings capital on that.
I was like, I can only make that call so many times. Yeah. It's either that or UFC. No, we're going to Enrique. Keep the wife happy. All right, Chargers at the Vikings, John. The game of the week. 54-point total. Pick 'em. Chargers 1 point. Road favorites. Both teams 0-2. Neither team can go 0-3. That's
go 2-1.
Yeah, I mean, that's an immovable force meeting
the irresistible force. The old Gorilla Monsoon.
Yes,
the irresistible force against the immovable object.
This is Hulk Hogan against Andre the Giant, trying to slam him in WrestleMania 1 or 2.
3.
Or 3. How do you remember the WrestleMania?
Come on, man.
Come on.
WrestleMania 1 was Mr. T.
Iron Sheik. No, I think it was the Iron Sheik.
WrestleMania 1 was Mr. T and Hogan against Piper and Orndorff.
You're so good. I love it. I love that you know that, John. I just learned that about you, and it makes me happy.
I know all the old school 80s wrestling, everything.
All of that makes me happy.
Yes.
So the Chargers, this is a 54-point total game. So there is a ton of DFS angle to dissect here. But before I get to that, betting side, it's a pick'em game, 54-point total. Can you even? I am not fucking with this game at all. But what do you have a take here? Do you have a side?
I don't love it either. From a betting standpoint, we haven't seen anything come in from the sharps at all, either on this game. I mean, like I said, close to a pick'em, 53.5. The total just got hammered to the up, right? So I mean, it was open 49.5 all the way up to that 54 number. We're seeing more, like, it kind of looks like the sharper money when you look at the handles is coming in on Minnesota, and just, the money and the tickets are all coming in on the over. I mean, you kind of still like this game to go over. You got to still like points in this game. I don't think I could bet this game under. Yeah, I mean, it's too disappointing. Like, I'm not really, I don't consider Minnesota disappointing, or the Chargers, quite frankly, because I was bearish on both of these teams going into the year, especially Minnesota. If you look last year, they won, I forget how many games they won within like 3 points. They had a negative scoring margin. 13 wins with a negative scoring margin is absolutely insane. So there was going to be a regression this year, and now you're seeing it. They're losing these close games. So one of these teams, like I said, most likely is going to win. And so yeah, which one is that going to be? I think the Chargers are the better team, but the game's on the road, and so I think it's right where it should be, the line.
Yeah, I don't think you fuck with this game as far as a bet. It's too difficult. But there are DFS angles galore. So I'm just going to start to get into both of the running games are really interesting. Alexander Mattison has not had a good game yet. He has been a disaster, really. But and there's a lot of people coming out, oh, he's not good at football and he sucks and he's not a good running back and blah, blah, blah. Listen, this guy's been around for a while. He's had good games. So I don't think the talent is the issue here. I just, A, opportunity, B, variance, C, game scripts, even though some of these scripts he should have done well in, to be quite honest. But I think the good games from Alexander Mattison are coming, right? So Alexander Mattison, super low owned against the Chargers defense that you can run on. Again, didn't do anything on other games where you could run, but here's another opportunity for Madison to have a big game. Flip side, Austin Eckler has not practiced yet as of Wednesday. We saw Josh Kelly do nothing as chalk. We knew the chalk was bad last week. In fairness, you got to be careful running backs against the Titans. So we knew that was probably not going to be good chalk, but it wasn't like he was stuffed. He just barely got any touches at all in that game. So that's a little bit interesting / concerning. Viking side, I mean, has there ever been a better setup for, Justin Jefferson to come out and smash? Like, there's so many spots would look great. Addison, I think people are mistaking him a little bit in the role. Him and KJ Osborne are pretty much on the field and getting targeted really similar. So Addison and KJ Osborne, kind of similar plays on that team. It's TJ Hawkinson, who's really the number 2 target. He's priced up massively, but I love Hawkinson in that spot. And then on the Chargers, we saw last week that normally I don't like to play Herbert, and I've got a lot of shit from this. I've taken a lot of shit. People ripped on me week 1 in some of my breakdown videos where I said, I'm not super high on Herbert because just the way that team plays. Herbert's a good player, but he never seems to crush the ceiling, right? And people just ripping on me. But the reason that happens with Herbert is because Eckler is so dynamic of a running back, similar to why Purdy rarely has a smash game. It's because the running back is so dominant on the team that they're usually taking 1 or 2 of the 4 or touchdowns that are available. And so you just wind up with Herbert not throwing for 4 touchdowns, which is what you need to win the tournament that week. He's got to throw for 4. With Eckler on the shelf, I think the opportunity is there for Herbert to have a different style of game than what he normally has. So you can elevate Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and those guys and Herbert to a playable spot. So that's a little bit of the way I'm going at it this week. I think you got to play some Herbert. You got to play some Cousins. This game is too high. How do you treat the highest game? You're really great as a DFS player in terms of fading the chalk, right? You're known as someone who does not get too heavy on a team or a chalk. I look at your lineups most weeks to see what you're up to. So how do you treat a situation like this where this game has got a 54-point total? The next best is at 48, meaning this one is standing out as a shining, beacon upon the hill of a game that's going to suck everybody's attention away. How do you deal with this in DFS when you're max entering the Millie Maker or whatever it is you're up to?
Yeah, I mean, if you're mass entering on, especially something like the Millie Maker, I think you have to kind of spread it out. So you can't be heavy on just that one. At least I don't want to be. I don't want to be heavy on the one game that everybody's going to be heavy on. More often than not, that's not the game that's going to wind up taking down the Millie. So I mean, we've seen it the first 2 weeks. The stacks haven't even been in my top 40 projected stacks that have hit. Now you've had a couple of good ones. Who wound up being was it a Jones stack on the Millie?
Jones to Waller was last week.
Right. So that was, I don't even think that cracked like my top 40 stacks that I had last week. And the week before you had, I mean, it was the 2. Okay. Well, the 201 was one of the better stacks in week 1, but we're seeing some of these stacks come from way back, way lower than the projected totals.
I mean, Jordan Love week 1 popped. It was Jordan Love. He was nowhere on anybody's list.
Yeah. Well, then Mac Jones had probably the second best game at a quarterback, I think, in week 1. Which, I mean, who's ever going to see Mac Jones doing that? And last week we had
Dobbs had a big week.
Dobbs,
what? Yeah. Who? Dobbs? There were some surprising monster games last week.
It's always when we look at it the week in advance and we're looking at it like, on a Wednesday here before Sunday, everything just looks so clear. You're like, okay, well here, here's a good spot. Chargers, Minnesota, like boom, Herbert's going to be in his lock button. Cousins. I mean, the Chargers gave up all those yardage, all that yardage. By the way,
Cousins puts up a nuts level performance as well last week, but it was a Thursday night
on the Thursday game. Yeah.
But couldn't be more unexpected. against an elite defensive team. I don't remember who they played.
Well, they play Philly, but now Philly. Yeah, but you say they're elite. Philly's the one who gave up all those points to Mac Jones. So I mean,
Maybe
who
they're
knows
not
what's
good.
going on there?
Are the Eagles not that great defensively so far?
I mean, they haven't shown it yet. And then you see the Chargers gave up all that yardage to Tua. They're the ones who gave up the nuts to Tua Hill combo in week 1. So you got to like Cousins to Jefferson. I mean, the one good thing about Minnesota was last year is you had Minnesota was the best stackable game stack of them all because they were just terrible defensively against the pass, but they put up a ton of points offensively. So, your original question is, when do you fade? I mean, this is not something that you necessarily fade. I think just when you're playing in your mass entering, you're going to be in there, maybe at the market, whatever you feel like the market is going to be on game stacks here, but you're going to have to spread it out as well because we just get surprised week in, week out with who the best game stack's going to be. So you could stick to like what Burns's book and kind of stick to taking those teams taking the games with the higher totals and the team totals. But that doesn't necessarily mean the game that has the highest total on the board is going to be the biggest winner. But when I'm mass multi-entering, I'm certainly not fading it all the way. That's for sure.
Did you? I'm sure you did. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Did you attack the Monday night game?
Oh, okay. What? Oh, the Monday night game was a mess.
The 2-gamer. Did you play? I
played it. Yeah.
You played the 2-gamer. Okay. What was your exposure in the tournament to Nick Chubb?
100%.
Shame on you.
So, yeah, I don't want to get too deep into it.
I just wanted to know. I wanted to
go. You have to go. Listen, he was going to be the nuts if he doesn't get his knee blown out. But
he had 70 yards like 1 quarter into that game.
He was I think 64 yards or whatever he was in the first quarter. And he was about to go into the end zone. They were going to score right there. And that touchdown goes to Ford. But in those short slates, I'll go all in on the guy who's going to be close to all. He was I think he was 90%. So at that point, I'm not going to go 70. I'm just going to go. He's in the winner, barring an injury, 100%. So I'd just rather go 100% on that player.
Yeah.
Olave's in a similar situation. I just thought Cooper was just massively under-owned. Amari Cooper.
Well, Cooper was the guy, right? That was.
So I wound up 50% Cooper, and that took me off Olave a bit. Before, if Cooper wasn't playing, I would have just been all in on Olave and on Chubb.
Oh wow, you just would have went 100%.
I would have went 100 because they're just at 90% owned for both of them. I just don't like fading. I like fading 40% guys, 50% guys, but you see it sometimes in NASCAR too. The guys 65, 70% owned. I'll just go all in because at that point, even when they don't even score what you assume they were going to score, unless they're just terrible, they're going to be in the nuts because they're going to be in the winner at least because so many people are going to have them. And I'll just go. I'd rather just go over the market on those guys. Basketball happens all the time. That's how we win in basketball, is just going all in on the value guy.
Basketball is
70% owned.
A whole different story. Now I have one more DFS strategy related question for you. Sorry, I hope you guys are watching and enjoying this shit because I'm going to pick his brain when I can. So here's my other DFS related question. On this past Sunday, I can't believe we're doing this an hour. I should have done this up at the front. I didn't think of it. But on this past Sunday, we get information pretty close to early lock, but maybe it was 12:45 that Cam Akers effectively benched Kyren Williams, the starter, right? The dude that won the million, or one of the dudes who won a lot of money, was talking to a sharper guy. And I think the dude that won the million did this also, got this news, said, you know what, this is late news about a cheap running back that's starting. Now, again, in a game that didn't look great from a matchup perspective, going up against San Francisco. But nonetheless, we find out that Kyren Williams is the starter. And we know that because this information came out 5 minutes before early lock, no one's going to be playing him. No one's playing him. No one is on him. No one really liked Cam Akers. So it's this other guy's playing. Who cares? But there were some sharp players who were like, I don't care if I can get a starting running back for cheap at low ownership because the information was late and a lot of people aren't going to adjust. I'm going to adjust. And of course, Kyren Williams went off and, the rest is history, $1 million winner. Do you instinctually, when you have a late bit of information, like the Amari Cooper information, wasn't supposed to play, last second he's playing, do you want to skew higher ownership to that player just for the leverage factor, regardless of the matchup or any of the other potential reasonings there?
I mean, often, yes. In that situation, I didn't do it. I got the news, and I didn't have much Williams anyway. I didn't like the match in a full slate like that. It's like, I don't know. I don't think it was necessarily the greatest play. It worked out, but you've got a full slate. Like, he still has to do something. It's not
Yeah,
like in a
no,
short slate.
and it was a bad matchup. There's no doubt.
Yeah, so I didn't really love the match. I'm like, I'm not changing all my lineups to bring in someone who the thing is, I already had him. I had him projected at a decent, like he was going to be the main back either way. And so my assumption was, Akers, fine. Akers isn't playing, but it's not going to really boost Williams all that much. It was just going with, I forget who the third running back was who came in. I'm like, it's just going to boost that back, and just maybe I bump up Williams a little bit, but not enough to change it. So, I mean, it wound up being the wrong call.
Flip side, so that situation not on board, but flip side, the Amari Cooper situation, same deal. A lot of people not playing.
Well, Amari Cooper, I knew was playing because Stefanski was on earlier in the day. I forget which show he was on, and basically said he was going to play. So
yeah, but people thought like, oh, he's going to play with a groin injury. What if he's kind of half-assing it? He's still the ownership was lowered artificially. Where normally
I was shocked he was at 15% owned, and I was shocked.
Oh, was he? Did he get all the way up to 50%?
In 15.
He was like, oh, that's what I was going to say. It was like, yeah, he was very low. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised. I was
at 50, and I'm like, yeah, there's no, I didn't get. I was initially like in the 30s, and I'm like, I should probably get a little higher on him here because I want to be like, I think that's going to be a key. Yeah, I mean, you wind up getting injuries in both games at the running back position. I mean, everything was just a mess.
Listen, other weird shit happened on that 2-game slate, and you're not expecting multiple running back injuries. But I did notice in my back testing that because weird shit happens, that generally limiting all players, regardless of how good the spot is, to, no more than 45-50% ownership across every single position group was a more profitable way to approach the 2-game slate, just in general. Like, especially, though, the Michael Thomas at 50% types that you want to be under the field on. But just generally, when you did that, what ends up happening is you just end up with more of the Jerome Fords and the Tony Jones Juniors than you would if you don't do that. And it's just, they randomly pop into lineups, and all of a sudden I did pretty good on the slate because I did that. I didn't limit it enough. I was at 70% Chubb because I like you. I was like, man, this guy is in so good of a spot. I wish I'd gone lower, but like, just limiting it at all did allow I had lineups with Jones Jr. and I had lineups with Ford, and those were in the top 100 in the tournament that I had entered. So that kind of saved even though I didn't take first because I didn't force enough of those guys to find the right mix, but every lineup that had Ford or the other dude in it, or Jones Jr., like, was in basically the top 100. Like, there weren't many lineups in the entire contest that just had those guys or just had one or the other. All right. Anyway, let's get back to it. I hope you guys enjoyed that little sort of DFS strategy break there, because I love that kind of stuff. That's more important to me than talking about players or individual plays. I like to know how to react to certain situations. And if we can come up with repeatable things like, you know what, if a player's supposed to be out, but then he's in, fuck it, load up because he's under owned. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, I like to have rules of thumb. I like a rule of thumb. Speaking of rules of thumb, I got a rule of thumb of not to play players from this game. And that's the Patriots at the Jets. Now, the reason I want to play it is because this game carries a 36.5 point team total, game total. One of the lowest totals I've ever seen in all of the watching of football. Not the lowest ever, but it is close. And the Patriots are 2.5 point road favorites in this one. Now, John, betting angles. We going for my boys? J-E-T-S.
I like the Jets. Plus, I took it yesterday at the 3, and it's moved down now to the 2.5. So This defense is, I mean, I was shocked last week that Dallas was able to put 30 up again. So I think that says a lot more about Dallas than it did the Jets. This Jet defense is stifling. You know, the thing about the Jets is like this team last year was in the same exact situation. I mean, all they did was just revert back to last year. And this team was a borderline playoff team last year with no quarterback. They never had a quarterback the entire year, and they still don't have a quarterback.
And
now.
they have better running backs, by the way. Last year, they lost Brees Hall.
Yeah.
And they were rolling fucking Zonovan Knight out as their running back. Now you got Brees Hall, Dalvin Cook, healthy, both of them. So you have a dynamic sort of running back duo to complement the lack of the quarterback.
Yeah, I think the Patriots are in trouble in this game. I think they're going to have a hard time moving the ball. If you watch that game against Miami, yeah, I'm still not convinced here. Mac Jones is the guy. Now, you know, we were just talking about how many points he had on that game against Philly, but I don't think you see it here. I think I think they shut him down. So I do like I like taking the points here at home with the Jets, and just to see if we're getting anything. I don't know if we had any of the sharp action on this one. If any of the sharps are agreeing with me, well, you know, the public is actually on New England, which is always a good sign. So the public has bet New England. Not seeing any sharp money yet on the
squares.
game.
The squares are on the Patriots. I like all of it. Can you play Brees Hall this week in a game like this? Jets defense paired up with Brees Hall, a little correlation.
Yeah, I think potentially. Let me see what New England's done so far. I mean, they've been okay. Nothing special against the run. It's tough. You know, listen, you go back to New England. What's New England going to do? I mean, they're going to try to shut the run down. I mean, so do I expect much there? Probably not. I mean,
You're saying the Patriots will come into this game knowing the Jets are going to come in and try to run heavy, and they will bring a man down into the box and make Zach Wilson beat you through the air.
You have to let Zach Wilson beat you. I mean, you can't, you know, you can't let them just run the ball down your throat. So I think that's the move. You know, they'll play man to man pretty much, I think, and go ahead, try and beat me. You know, if I'm the Jets, I say this all the time. I'm like, the one thing this kid could do is throw the ball. Like he's got a great arm. So I think your game plan is if they're going to stuff everything down low, I think you've got to just air the ball out with Wilson and hope for the best. Like play a long game, right? You're not going to grind. Like they're not going to have 80-yard drives. They're just not going to have 80-yard drives. So every once in a while, you hit, not that it was a bomb, but you hit that one to Garrett Wilson last week, right? Just kind of a blown angle that they took there at Dallas. But you're going to have to take those kind of shots. You're going to have to throw the ball 20 yards down the field plus and hope that you hit a couple of them and then just rely on your defense to shut teams down. I mean, that's how they're going to have to play.
Right from John Statsational Alesia's mouth, play Garrett Wilson this week because the Patriots are going to smash the box, try to stop the run at all costs. That will leave a safety not over top. And Zach Milton trying to hit the hot MILF in the stands will accidentally throw it to Garrett Wilson, who will take one to the house.
Let me ask you this about Garrett. Like, why was everyone so excited about Garrett Wilson this year?
Because Aaron Rodgers was going to be the quarterback.
Right. And because of what he did last year. And they're like, well, now he's getting a better quarterback, right? Well, yeah. It reverts back to like what I just said. Like
a lot of those good games, in fairness, a lot of those good games last year came with like Mike White or the other quarterbacks. It wasn't Milson it was like Joe Flacco. You know, it wasn't Zach Wilson who was the quarterback for most of his good games. So I can't.
But I would not in season-long leagues. Like if people are down on Garrett Wilson, I would not be. Like they don't have any other. Like that's going to be the guy. I mean, he's going to be their offensive. Yeah, I get it. You know, the offense sucks, but when they suck at all, you know, when the passing game is just going to one guy, which I think that's all they're going to be.
There's no one else to throw to. There's no. Alan Lazard was a Rodgers guy. He's not like a
right.
There's no one else to throw to on that team. So I really like it. All right, John, let's power through the rest of these as we spend a lot of time, I think great time talking DFS strategy. On that note, what's going on with your power ranking sheet? When is that?
It's up on the app.
I saw the power ranking sheet on the Sharp app, but I did not see the full sheet. I saw.
Yeah, it's hard to get the. It's hard for it to be to look right on the app. But I did post it in the Discord for
All
the
right,
guys in the Discord.
let's work on that on the next week's show. We'll pop that on screen, show people what they're missing in the Sharp App Discord, because that's one of my favorite DFS tools as well, and across the board, and fantasy sports tools. So we'll mention that, and you can get access to that. Everybody who's a Sharp App subscriber can get that in the Sharp App Discord. If you're not a member of Sharp, code DFS Army DFSA 20% off. All right, Saints at the Packers. The Saints are +2 on the road here. Packers are home favorites. This game carries a 42.5 point total. Saints did not look that good to me the other day in getting that win against the Panthers, and the Panthers suck. I think the Packers are a lot better of a team than the Panthers here, offensively and just in general defensively across the board. So Saints +2 here. I don't know this feels like a Packers spot to me all day, John.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of looks that way. I don't have anything that I like, so I haven't made a bet yet on this game. Packers are getting hit pretty good here. The public's on the Packers. They're getting hit with the money, over 90% of the money coming in on the Packers. The under's getting bet as well. How's the line moved from 1 to 3, kind of settled in at the 2. And on the total, if I can scroll across, yeah, that's kind of bounced up and down as well. So can't get too much of a read on there. But like I said, the public, as you might expect on Green Bay, because Green Bay's looked a lot better, I think, than New Orleans has. So I get the, you're getting the underneath a field goal here at home. I think people are apt to take it. But the New Orleans defense hasn't been terrible.
The Saints play worse on the road, John. They just do. And that's been years and years. Now, I don't need different coaches, different players. I think it might be just dome teams, just when they leave the dome, are just not as good. That's just kind of my theory on it. But they haven't been good. They haven't been good. They play better at home than on the road. So that for me is a big part of this one. Saints don't have much going on at running back. This is a weird game for DFS purposes. So let's talk about the Saints running back situation right now. They don't have much going on. They got Ford Jr. They've got Alvin Kamara waiting in the wings. The rookie, I can't remember his name.
They haven't been able to run the ball anyway.
Yeah, but the rookie anyway has been out for the last couple of weeks. His name escapes me at this moment. I don't know why, but the rookie running back, the name escapes me. But he hasn't played, and I don't think he's going to. So they might get another game of Ford Jr. for cheap. Which, okay, Kendry Miller. If Kendry plays, I think he actually might take the role, or you just don't want to mess with their running backs at all. The running backs haven't been good. It's been Jamal Williams. It's been bad matchups, but they're switching the personnel up. The flip side, the Packers, there's a rotating crew of ne'er-do-wells and injured players at wide receiver. I don't know how to mess with anything DFS purposes on the Packers until like a Christian Watson comes back. It's hard to trust any of them. AJ Dillon. So I don't think Jones is going to play once again, which means we'll get another game of AJ Dillon. Dillon didn't do shit in the last game as well. Didn't get touches. They didn't get opportunities. I don't blame him. Didn't play bad. Just didn't get many opportunities at all. It's a weird one. It's a weird one for DFS. I don't really trust Dillon after the lack of opportunities last week. I don't really know what's going on with the Saints running backs. I didn't see enough volume for Olave to want to pay up for him. I'm having a hard time picking spots in this game that I'm interested in. The whole game just doesn't interest me that much from a DFS angle. Sorry. It's just what it is. Let's move on, John. Titans at the Browns. Next up, this is the last of the early games, and the Titans are 3.5 point road underdogs, taking on a Browns team. Man, Deshaun Watson, he looked like shit. The team total 42.5 on this one. Deshaun Watson looked terrible last week. Sacked 7 times. Just awful. Just awful. But that was against a much better defensive team, I would say, particularly against the pass. Now they get the Titans, who are, I would imagine your sheet loves attacking the Titans via the air. They have not been a very good defensive team when it comes to stopping the pass. They've been elite at stopping the run so far this season, from at least my basic understanding of it. So, I'm going right back to Amari Cooper. That dude is the clear alpha in that offense. I'm going right back to him, John. On the Brown side, Titan side, it's tough to trust anybody outside of Derrick Henry.
From a betting standpoint, I've been riding Tennessee the first 2 weeks. It's worked for me, and I'm coming back to them this week again. So I'm going to go 3 weeks in a row on the Titans. I got this one. Let me see. I did get the 3.5 on that. So put that in, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday for everybody at the Sharp app. So yeah, with that low total though, and let's see where the money's coming in. I mean, we don't have anything on the Sharp report on the game. More money is coming in on the Titan side, and then most of the money coming in on the under. I think people just saw that Monday night game. Looked atrocious. I mean, you nailed it where Tennessee's been dominant against the running backs. They've had, well, think about this now. So the chalky value running back has faced Tennessee week 1, week 2, and now week 3 again. You've got another backup coming in to,
and it's burned us.
Or if you've taken probably burn again this week.
I feel differently this week. I feel like this time I didn't play him the first 2 weeks. We were clearly off of them. Titans defense really good against the run, and especially Kelly being the chalk that week. We're like, dude, just let somebody else take that chalk. As we talk about it in the DFS Army sheets and Discord, I'm kind of getting on Ford though.
I mean, I watched that game. He wasn't overly impressive. I mean, he had one long run. I mean, he had a ton of yards, but one of them, he got most of it on one run. Then he had that one run that was phenomenal where he was like held for like a 5-yard loss and turned it into an 8-yard gain. That was great. He gets in the end zone there right at the Chubb injury. He catches that pass. So I don't know. I mean, that offensive line, it's a great offensive line, Cleveland. So that they should be able to run the ball. You know, a lot of it is Chubb, but that offensive line is good to run again. This is the real sort of the immovable object against the irresistible. Was it now I forgot what it is myself.
Force meets the immovable object.
Yes. So that's here because Tennessee, you know, has been able to be pretty dominant against the run, but they've been terrible against the pass. You just got to be careful in a game like this with such a low total. I mean, is it going to bust out into a big scoring game where, you know, Cooper's going to be that guy? I don't know. I don't think so. So yeah, I'll tread lightly with this game as far as DFS goes, but I do like Tennessee plus the points.
I like the bet side that you're taking there. And again, I'm just going to reiterate this. When teams produce well to a position and they swap in a different guy, that's a much better situation than some team that kind of sucks at running back anyway, but now the cheap replacement guy is in there, right?
Well, when they have a great offensive line, and that's the reason, which they do. So
that could be a reason. It could be that Ben Roethlisberger is the quarterback and he just checks down to the running back 10 times a game. It doesn't matter to me what the reason is. All I need to know is this team produces really well, running back outcomes that are really good. And Cleveland has been doing that for like 5 years now. That's literally been the focus of their offense. So when they swap in a different guy, that's better than a team that it's, you know, like the Bears, like, some other guy starting. Or the Vikings, who don't produce that well to the running back position most weeks anyway. So who cares? It's just a little different of a situation. And I am going to play Ford at his price this week, especially on FanDuel, where he is just a screaming buy. All right. Panthers at the Seahawks. We are in the 4:00 zone. Only a couple games, only a couple late games, 3 of them this week. So Panthers at the Seahawks. This one's really interesting. 42-point total. Seahawks 6-point home favorites. John, the Panthers offense is a mess. I mean, listen, expected, but the rookie looks like a rookie out there. He's making mistakes. He's throwing interceptions. They're letting him make mistakes. They're letting him learn. But the Panthers don't have like a strong enough running game to make up for that in my mind. So I expect a lot of losses for the Panthers this year, and I expect them to lose this game. Will they lose by 6 or more?
I mean, the Sharps like Carolina. So Sharp money came in looking at the Sharp report on the Panthers side. I had the Panthers Monday night. We were just talking about that. I think they got to let Young kind of run a little bit more. I mean, that seemed like to be some of their best offense was when he was able to get out of the pocket and scramble a little bit. So we'll see if they do that in this game. But
He was not a big runner in college.
No, but he's got him.
He can do it.
I don't think he designed runs, but he's got to get out there and run. I mean, his total was like 9.5 Monday night, his yardage total, and he beat that easy. I thought that was kind of a good over play, but yeah, you're going to see. We'll see what his prop is this week on that, and that's another thing. Like getting the Sharp app and look at all the top props and all the props when you're doing DFS, just because it's going to help you figure out projections, especially on like the short slate, like the showdowns and stuff like that, where you could really get in there and start looking at, look at the court. It should be, super easy to just do the math in your head. Like it's the same stuff that we did for the Prize Picks Proptimizer, which is just looking at what the sports books have and then converting that into a projection. But you could go look at like, passing yards, receiving yards. Look at the the Thursday night game. That's all up there right now. You can look at the Thursday night game and be like, all right, well, what's the total going to be for passing yardage by Daniel Jones's passing yardage, and then figure out his rushing total, and you'll get a decent idea. And then just look up what his touchdown props are, and you can get your own projection without even looking up projection. So I like that, especially in the short slates. But
Thursday night freebie, John, George Kittle under 45.5 yards. Boom.
You like the under?
I mean, they're not throwing a Kittle when
they haven't been throwing to him.
Debo and Ayuk are healthy. They're not throwing to him. Yeah. I love the under here.
Yeah.
It's great spot.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm stepping on your throat in that league that we're in together, but I had a monster week, but I do have Kittle in that, and I haven't been able to play him because he's just not getting he's not getting looks. But
in fairness to me, I did not draft.
You didn't draft that. I know you did not draft it. So I can't get.
It's not a bad team, but I didn't.
No, your team's pretty good, but
yeah, it's not bad.
But you did not draft it.
Yeah.
I just want to win that league because I went very unconventional intentionally with the hope of it being good. So
well, that's an NFFC. That's an expensive league, but it's also part of a giant tournament. You don't just win the league; you get into a tournament with a massive prize.
And it was all these, it's all these experts from wherever. So I like to go I went a little wacky with my strategy in the hopes that I could crush these guys because they were ripping on it. I'm like, well, when 10 teams are all doing the same thing, you got to go different. So, but anyway, yeah, with this game, Carolina, like I said, the sharp money came in at the +6. We're seeing the money come in on Seattle. That makes sense. Money's coming in on the under. So yeah, if you want to back the sharp side of the game, that's the beauty inside the Sharp app. You head to the Sharp report. Anthony posts it periodically throughout the course of the day, and each and every day he updates it. And you can just back the Sharp money and do well. So Sharp's taking Carolina at +6, and I'm not shocked with that play at all.
As far as DFS angles go on this one, I'll go back to what we talked about earlier on the show in the props breakdown. In that, I don't really see this one as where the Seahawks passing offense just lights it up. I think the Seahawks defense is a great play, and it's probably my favorite semi-cheap defense option on the main slate. Again, Bryce Young is just making mistakes, and we're going to take advantage of that for as much as we can. On the Seahawks side, I think this is a run-heavy approach. I think we could see 2 touchdowns for Kenny Walker, K-Dubs, Kenny Dynamite Walker, as I like to call him. So that's the only real player that carries my interest in this game as a whole, period. Let's move on, John. Bears at the Chiefs, 0-2 Bears, 12.5-point road underdogs, taking on a Chiefs team that's just 1-1 right now, has not put it all together offensively yet. Kelsey's back, getting healthier. The rest of the wide receiver groups is basically, how would I put it? Just kind of getting things figured out at the moment for the Chiefs. And the Bears, I don't know what's going on with Justin Fields, but it's funny. The same play that I noticed where I go, there's something wrong with this kid's confidence, I later saw on Twitter by an analyst talking about how is he missing this wide open guy because he's afraid to let loose. He's afraid to throw the football. It's a confidence issue. It's going to click, I think, at some point, John. It will click, and how do we know when?
Well, I'm more concerned with the fact that they've only designed like a handful of runs, not even a handful, I think, design runs for him. Like his value, we need him running the ball for the value. I think it was, last week was really disappointing. I think that was a spot where I thought he was going to have a better game. I could give him the pass in week 1. Packers have all summer to kind of game plan for him in the division. Week 2 against Tampa, I thought he was going to do a little bit better than he did. Now, Kansas City defense looked strong last week. The defense hasn't really been their problem. It's been the offense, which is crazy. Kansas City. You'd like to think they get healthy this week here and they put up some points. We shall see. Now, I like this at plus 13. I'm actually taking the points.
You're taking Bears and the points.
I'm taking the Bears and the points here. I took it at 13. Has it moved now? I think it's moved to 12.5.
It's in at 12.5 on the book that I'm looking at.
So it's actually come down since I've taken it. So I caught it at 13 yesterday, and it's kind of dropped to 12.5 or 12.
Let me ask you a question.
Where you are.
Just a sharp better or just a general better question. So you're taking the plus 13. Does that coincide with an over, an under, or it's completely irrelevant?
Well, it does. So if you like the Bears, you're gonna want to take the game to the under. Right. We saw this with it's very similar to that Dallas game last week. Like if Dallas against the Jets, like if Dallas was going to cover that game, you wanted to take it on the over. I actually liked that game under. So I liked it. I didn't like it enough to bet it, but I liked that game to the under, which means I'm like, if you force me, I'm going to take the Jets plus the points. You're getting even more points here. This is 13 points at a total. Now it's a high total, right? So that game was a much lower total, but if you're going to take double-digit dogs, generally those teams are going to cover only because the game just gets maybe gets a little sloppy and stays low scoring. If they somehow keep they keep the Chiefs to 24 points and they could get to 13, 14 points, like that type of a game where the game stays under. That's typically how it's going to cover. So yeah, if you're willing to lay the points, then usually you want to take the game to the over.
Yeah. Okay. I was curious on that note. As far as DFS angles go in this game, John, so the Bears look like they're going to start to feature maybe Roschon Johnson sooner than later at running back. I'm not ready to jump on board with that, but if you have a fantasy league that you're in, it's a guy you probably want to pick up pretty quick. I played DJ Moore last week. I think you go right back to him here. DJ Moore remains underpriced. He should be the focal point of the passing offense for the Bears. And they don't throw it a lot, but they're going to be down in this game and they're probably going to be throwing. You could probably go right back to DJ Moore, but obviously in order for that to work, Fields has to not completely suck. I don't know if we can count on that. Certainly if I have Fields in the lineup, I am stacking him because for him to produce at his elevated salary right now, it won't be enough just with the legs. He's got to throw a little bit. So I need one of Kmet or DJ Moore in that lineup with him. Not because Fields can't have a decent day without any passing work, but he's not winning you the tournament at his price unless he hits the 30+ number, which doesn't happen with the legs alone. He's got to do something with the pass as well to get there. As far as the Chiefs go, I think outside of Kelsey, who's always a very good play every single week, no matter what, I don't trust any of them. I don't trust any of those wide receivers. I don't trust the running backs. I don't trust any of it. But Chiefs defense is really interesting. So that's a spot that we can pay attention to. Last game of the slate, John, Cowboys at the Cardinals. And since we're talking about 12.5 point spread, massive underdog situations, we got another one of those here for you. But in this case, I think the Dallas defense backs up that number, coming in to give a beating to the Chargers. What do you think?
Yeah, Dallas looks like they're on a mission.
Not the Chargers, the Cardinals.
Yeah, the Cardinals. Yeah, Dallas looks like they're on a mission. Everyone with the, Cardinals are tanking and all that, but I hate that talk. Like, especially in the NFL, like teams don't tank. Now, front offices may tank, like they may put an inferior product out on the field. But if you think these guys are going out on an NFL field and tanking, like not giving it their all, like you're out of your mind. Like
the players always want to win.
Players want to win, and they also don't want to get hurt. Like if you think they're going to half-ass it out on the field, like there's no one, there's no NFL players out there, not giving it all. The coaches certainly want to win for their jobs. So once they put now it's an inferior product. We know what the product is. So that's what the line is.
Have you met Kyler Murray? I'm pretty sure there are some guys not giving it their all.
Well, that there are always a couple of guys who aren't giving it
That should be the
their all.
thumbnail.
But
I just made a thumbnail face.
yeah, he did.
Yes, I did.
But for the most part, listen, these guys are trying to win. So, but with that said, I think Dallas is on a mission right now. The shutout week 1, just gave up that one long pass to Wilson last week. Otherwise, that game they pretty much shut the Jets. No, not the most difficult, and they're not going to have a hard time shutting down Arizona as well. So, have we really seen a true test of Dallas? Not yet, but I think that when you get those really great defenses, and this is a team with Super Bowl aspirations, they start feeding into the whole, like, they want to keep you to the least amount of points as possible, no matter what the offense puts up. So, and they're playing it hard throughout the game. Like, they're on a mission to be the number 1 defense in the league this year. I think that's their goal. And you're seeing a change in offense, the offensive play calling. He said he was going to run the ball more. He has. They're leaning on the run. It's not all about Dak right now. So when you have a defense like that, that is kind of the way you want to play it, right? Run the ball, got a great offensive line, and that's what we're seeing. So, fantasy wise, Dak hasn't been great, but the running game has been, and defensively, just across the board, just every facet of the game, they're just shutting teams down. So difficult to like Arizona in this one from a betting.
I am not. I think it's a suck a bet if you take the 12.5 here. You gotta play the Dallas side, or include Dallas in your teaser and just get the number down to 6.5. Just tease it. Tease that. You could cheese that in the Chiefs and lock in some wins. It's easy money. Lock it in. Tease it down. Let me give you a couple DFS angles on this game, and there are only 2 that really matter, in my opinion. Number 1, playing the Cowboys defense in this game over 4K will not be done by a lot of people in the field. They are wildly expensive. They're going to be super low owned, and the upside is like a GPP winning 30-point game. That is the potential for Dallas defense here and every week. Against a poor opponent, this team can clean up. I played them last week, got the 15 for the 4K price point. And you know what? I think it was the right call. Tony Pollard, you mentioned him in the breakdown. The dude is a stud. He got a ton of touches last week. The Cowboys broke the mold last week with Pollard against the Jets in a game they didn't really need to do this. And they went out and they ran him 25 times and targeted him 8 times. Those are elite Christian McCaffrey peak numbers. He still put up 26 fantasy points against the Jets, who have one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. Tony Pollard is going to run wild. What you going to do when Tony Pollard runs wild on you this weekend, John? You see how I brought it back around?
Yeah, I like the WWF reference.
I'm doing that because I finally discovered a piece of pop culture that you're aware of. I'm going away from the Lord of the Rings stuff, and I'm going right to 1980s WWF. I feel like it was a discovery today.
There's nothing I don't know about any wrestling from the 80s.
I love it. I used to go to Blockbuster and rent the old WrestleManias to rewatch them all the time. Like, I am such a fan of this shit. I love that you like it too. But anyway, Cowboys defense, Tony Pollard. Yeah, could CeeDee Lamb or one of these other side pieces have a good game? Sure, but that's not the way I'm going to do it for this particular game. All right, guys. John, that's going to do it for the Game Plan NFL Week 2 main slate coverage. Remember to check out DFS Army. Promo code GEEK gets you 10% off. Sign up for VIP. And, of course, John representing the Sharp app. You can get all the incredible tools we talked about here on the show. Code DFSA20 on sharp.app. You sign up as a VIP. It's $39.99 a month. It never changes. You want that subscription. That subscription price will be $150 a month in a year. You want to catch it now. We're adding tools on the Sharp app every single week. We're improving the Prop Optimizer tool every week, and there's so many awesome things coming at Sharp. You guys have no idea. So make sure you're signed up there. And incredible DFS tools as well. The Prop Optimizer really does work wonders for DFS. Of course, the Sleeper and Prize Picks tools. Everything over there is really designed to help your bets and focus on player outcomes, which is really what we do at DFS Army as well. So check out Sharp app as well. And we want to thank the sponsor of this video, Mojo Fantasy, which is like a super fun game. You guys really should check it. Promo code DFS Army. You have to download it on the Apple Store. Use code DFS Army when you sign up. You get they will match your deposit up to $100. And it's the effect of playing on a sports book. An incredible, really cool, unique idea for a sports book where the prop markets are always liquid, but you can do it in a DFS format. And that's what I like, in a double up. So you're not risking thousands of dollars. You're risking $20. You win $40. You lose, you lose your 20. No big deal. But you get to bet player props all weekend long, have fun, and be doing it in game. So make sure you check that out. We will see you guys next time on another Game Plan.